These words, let me welcome Mr. Ganesh Lakshminarayanan, MD and CEO of Dell Computers India Ltd. To deliver the special address.
Good morning. I'm always fascinated to come to Chennai. As Lakshmi said, Dell has a huge stake in the state of Tamil Nadu. We have our manufacturing plant here. But personally, I was born in Tamil Nadu and I studied in Chennai. And I started my career in Chennai, so it's always exciting to come back to Chennai and talk to people. But there is one more reason why Chennai is really important to me, because Chennai is the place where Bharatiyar lived. And Bharatiyar, all of us know Bharatiyar as a poet, but Bharatiyar was more than a poet. He was a reformer, and if you read his essays on education and how to make education relevant to the times he lived, it's really inspirational. He was a man who dreamed, and he said, "Sendiduvi rettu thekkum, kalai chelvangal yavum konarthingu serpir." And if you look at the IT industry today, it has enabled people from all over India to go to nook and corner of the world and bring excellent treasures back to India. And every decade, and we have been in 3 decades so far in this industry, our skill set requirements in every decade has been different. And our educational institutions have adapted to the skill set requirements in every decade. And the new decade, which has just started, is going to bring new challenges. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how educational institutions can help and stay ahead, as Lakshmi pointed out, to make this industry relevant and make this industry bring more treasures from across the world. If you start back in 1980s, when this industry started, we were hiring only from top premier institutions. We will hire from IITs and regional engineering colleges. Because what the industry needed at that time was very smart people who could go abroad to client locations, understand the business problem, and do most of the work on site or bring some part of it offshore. The number of recruitments were not large, but those were the days when the seeds of this industries were sowed. But the recruitment was happening only in premier colleges. And the skill sets required were smart people with excellent IQ, and that was already happening because they had joined premier colleges. If you look at the second decade of this industry, that smart people which we sent abroad, they understood the domains. They could write the requirements and send it back so that the software factories of India could generate the code and testing. Most of the thinking was happening onshore. Most of the design was happening onshore. All you needed was people who can do really, really good coding in an efficient way without making a lot of mistakes. And we produced a lot of them. And that is the decade which our industry actually grew really, really fast. And most of the industries today, which are giants, happened in that time. And then one thing happened, which is called Y2K. People look at the work we did for Y2K and really said that is a lot of monotonous work. You have to pour through millions and lines of code to figure out how to change in one particular date. One of the side effects of that, which I always believed, is that it actually gave our programmers exposure to so many different domains and so many different applications. We built industry expertise. We understood how these applications worked. We understood how these functions worked. And they gave us a tremendous amount of knowledge into various domains and verticals. So our companies, which grew based on really high quality, low cost resources, now can start offering solutions. This is the time when the wealth started accumulating and people are willing to take more risks. You could see the confidence building up in our younger generations to go start new companies. You could see venture capitalism taking shape. We could see the India story taking shape. And the next decade, which is the last one which we just finished, actually truly was India's decade. We grew not only in just coding and developing and testing, but we actually created full platforms from India. Today, this industry is a $100 billion industry. It will generate millions of employment. For the first time today in India, if you're a graduate coming out of a good college, you have a decent shot at getting a job, which wasn't the case 30 years ago. So I think this industry is extremely relevant today, has added so much wealth to this country, but we are at a point where we are at the next stage of the evolution of this industry. Today, if you look at our companies, if you look at our revenue per employee across the companies, you won't see a huge difference between our Indian companies. You would see that most of them are in the $50,000, $45,000 range. Which means this particular industry has come to what we call as commodity industry, where there's no big difference between the work one company does and the next company does, which is not bad. There's nothing wrong being in a commodity industry. Dell is in a commodity industry, and a lot of companies you see today is in a commodity industry. But there is always a next phase of this industry as Dell itself is going through a transformation, being a very successful hardware vendor to be a services and solution vendor. This industry has to go through a transformation. And it's happening. And the transformation is what we are turning as non-linear growth. How do we make more revenue and margin much more than the number of people we are adding? Because we know as more and more people come out of colleges, there is going to be a limit to the availability of human resources. So what would be really advantageous for this industry is if we can actually generate more revenue margin per head than the number of people we are adding. And how will that happen? Has it happened in any other industry? You look at the banking industry in the last 20 years. You look at the asset-based growth. You look at their profit sheet growth. Their asset base has grown more than 20 times. The employment in the industry has not grown. The net employment hasn't grown. They've added people, but not as much as they've added revenue and margin. You look at the textile industry today. The textile industry today is exporting more than 20 years ago with less people. So non-linear growth, I don't want to mistake you to less employment. It's more valuable employment where each and every member who is coming out and joining this industry can generate more revenue and margin. That means we need to start selling solutions compared to selling services. We need to conceptualize products. We need to make sure the solutions we can offer can be packaged into products and sold. We need to make sure we create an environment where small entrepreneurs can create products, as Lakshmi said, because these things don't need huge development cycle. A mobile application can be developed at home, and the money can be earned at home without having a huge marketing expense. So Lakshmi talked about the power of social media. I'll give you one example for the power of social media. Dell provides services to its high-end customers called Alienware. Alienware is our big gaming system where you play very high-end games. We offer services in a very traditional way. You have a problem, you call us, we'll service you. Basically a linear one-to-one service model. But recently, social media in one particular community, we found that the customers were complaining one game was running slow. And they blamed it on Dell hardware. And one of our service associates found out that it's actually a small patch you can apply and it'll fix the problem. Within 30 minutes of posting that solution, 1,500 people clicked, I like the solution. So imagine within 30 minutes you have solved the problems of 1,500 customers using social media. 70,000 photographs are getting uploaded every minute in Facebook. 70,000 photographs. So this new technology, whether it's cloud computing or mobility or big data, which Lakshmi alluded to, creates amazing opportunities for people. But it needs the academics, the industry to think differently about the skill set which are going to be needed in this fourth stage of our IT revolution. Now, one thing this innovation-driven economy, one thing which is product-led services is going to need is a strong foundation on theory. I see a lot of colleges talk about how do we get practical, how do we make sure people understand how it's relevant. let's teach them quickly some coding and programming and we can put them employable. But true innovation happens when you really understand the foundations of a particular subject. So I really wish that our institutions will put more focus on making our students understand, even though it is not easy, even though it's not glamorous, but having a good understanding of theory is very critical. Our students should get exposed to certain domains. Understanding of how business domains work is critical for innovation. Having theoretical knowledges about applications and programming is one thing, but understanding how the retail industry is working in India, understanding how the manufacturing industry is working in India, at least picking one or two domains and understanding them is critical. Having a basic understanding of running a business, what does a cash flow mean, what does a balance sheet mean, is really important for any graduate. Not only for commerce graduate, for engineering students, because these engineering students are the ones who are going to start a company. The first thing they need to know is how to create a cash flow sheet. Having an understanding of how venture capital works is important because they need to raise money. They need to make sure that they can understand how funding works. And finally, they need to understand how to build together a team and work in a tough environment where starting a company is never easy. Starting a new operation is never easy. But I'm very confident that the industry, which has grown in the 30 years of its existence, has adapted so many times to grow to a $100 billion industry, which has generated so much wealth for this country and a brand for India, is going to adapt itself for the next decade as well. And if our educational institution, as Lakshmi alluded to, can take one step ahead, I think this is a decade where the industry can follow the academic institutes. And really creating an environment where millions of small companies can start and survive. And it's happening. I was with Lakshmi in Trivandrum for a CIA conference. You would be amazed to see in Trivandrum, in Kerala, where it's not considered to be investor friendly, how many startup companies have started and grown. And it's happening in Chennai, it's happening in Bangalore. I think the next decade is going to be the decade of products. It's going to be the decade of small companies and entrepreneurs and innovation. And I'm sure initiatives like ICTACT will help in getting this industry to the next level. And I wish this a lot of good luck for the day ahead. Thank you.